The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, and for a moment, the only sound in the ballroom was the tinkling of crystal shards scattering across white tile. 200 of Atlanta's wealthiest stood frozen, their eyes locked on 3 small children walking across the room. Not shuffling, not stumbling with assistance. Walking, alone, unaided, toward a woman in a simple black uniform who had tears streaming down her face. I'm Damon Harrington, and that night, Christmas Eve, under chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes, I watched my entire world crack open. My wife Vivian collapsed into the arms of a senator's wife, her champagne flute rolling across the floor. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But none of that mattered, because my 5-year-old daughter Nora, who hadn't spoken a single word in her entire life, who couldn't walk, who doctors said might never develop beyond infancy, looked up at my maid and whispered 3 words that stopped time itself. "Mama, don't go." Before we go any further, if you're new here, welcome. If you're back again, thank you. This is a true story about miracles that medicine couldn't explain, secrets that money tried to bury, and a love that refused to stay hidden. I'm asking you, please, hit that subscribe button right now. What happened that night changed everything I thought I knew about my family, my marriage, and the woman I'd barely noticed for 6 weeks. And if you stick with me until the end, you'll understand why sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who save us. The ballroom felt like it was tilting. Nora's small hand reached for Naomi's fingers. My son Liam took another step, his legs shaking but steady. Ezra, my youngest by 4 minutes, giggled. Actually giggled. A sound I'd spent $100,000 on specialists trying to coax out of him. Vivian was screaming something about calling security. A woman from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution had her phone out, recording everything. My lawyer grabbed my shoulder, whispering urgently about controlling the narrative. But I couldn't move. Because Naomi Brooks, the woman I'd hired to mop floors and wash windows, was kneeling on that expensive marble, gathering all 3 of my children into her arms like they were the most precious things in the world. And they were clinging to her. Not to me. Not to their mother who'd given birth to them. To her. How did we get here? That's what you want to know, isn't it? 6 weeks earlier, I didn't even know Naomi's last name. She was just another employee in a house full of people I paid to keep my life running smoothly while I built empires and attended meetings and pretended my home wasn't falling apart. Vivian and I hadn't shared a bed in 2 years. The triplets were a source of silent grief we'd stopped discussing. We had everything anyone could want, and absolutely nothing that mattered. Then one cold December morning, Naomi walked through my front door with a reference letter from a nursing home that had shut down, desperation in her eyes, and a gentle voice that somehow reached through walls I didn't even know were there. I need you to understand something before we go further. I'm a billionaire. I've built hotels in Dubai, luxury condos in Manhattan, resorts in the Maldives. When my children were diagnosed with developmental delays, I flew in specialists from Switzerland, London, Tokyo. I paid for experimental treatments. I funded research. And nothing worked. Nothing changed. My kids sat in their custom wheelchairs, staring at nothing, silent and still as porcelain dolls. The best doctors in the world told me to accept it. To be grateful they were alive. To stop hoping for more. Then this woman, this widow from the south side of Atlanta who'd never been to medical school, who earned $14 an hour cleaning my house, did something in 6 weeks that $15 million in medical bills couldn't do in 3 years. She sang to them. That's it. That's the miracle. She sang old hymns her grandmother taught her while she folded laundry and dusted picture frames. And my children, who neurologists said might never speak, started humming along. But here's what I didn't know that night at the charity ball, what nobody knew, what the cameras didn't capture and the guests couldn't see. Naomi wasn't just a maid who happened to have a gift with children. She had a secret. A connection to my family that went back 10 years, to a private clinic, to a choice she'd been forced to make, and to a truth that Vivian had paid a lot of money to keep buried. One of my triplets wasn't biologically Vivian's. And standing there in that ballroom, watching Naomi hold Nora like she'd rather die than let go, I realized with absolute certainty whose child she really was. The chandeliers seemed too bright. Someone was shouting about calling an ambulance for Vivian. My business partner Marcus was trying to usher guests toward the dining room, to salvage the evening, to spin this into something manageable. But there was no managing this. No spinning it. The truth was out, walking on unsteady legs across a marble floor in front of Atlanta's elite. Naomi looked up at me, her face streaked with tears and something that looked like terror. Our eyes met. And in that moment, without a single word spoken, we both understood. Everything was about to come apart. Every lie, every cover-up, every carefully constructed piece of the life I thought I was living. A reporter pushed forward. "What's happening here, Mr. Harrington? Is this some kind of publicity stunt? Who is that woman? How did those children just walk?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What could I say? That I didn't know? That I was just as shocked as everyone else? That the woman holding my children might actually be their mother? Vivian found her voice first. "She's nobody. She's the maid. This is absurd. Damon, get those children away from her right now." But Nora tightened her grip on Naomi's neck. Liam pressed his face against her shoulder. Ezra made a sound, a word, his very first word. No. The ballroom erupted. Cameras flashed faster. Guests started talking all at once, their voices rising into a wave of confusion and speculation. My 15-year-old nephew started live streaming on his phone. This was going to be everywhere by morning. On every news site. Every gossip blog. The Billionaire's miracle children. The mysterious maid. The wife collapsing in front of everyone. I made a choice in that second. Maybe the first real choice I'd made in years. I walked across that ballroom, past my wife, past my lawyer, past everyone trying to control the situation. I stopped in front of Naomi. She was trembling. The children were clinging to her like she was the only solid thing in a world that had just turned upside down. I knelt down, right there on the floor in my $3,000 suit, and I looked at my kids. Really looked at them. They were alert, present, alive in a way I hadn't seen since they were born. "How?" I asked Naomi quietly. "How did you do this?" She shook her head, tears falling faster now. "I just loved them," she whispered. "That's all. I just loved them." Something in my chest broke open. Or maybe it was something that had been broken finally starting to heal. I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that 6 weeks ago, this woman had walked into my house looking for work, and somehow, without me noticing, she'd brought my family back to life. But this story doesn't start at that charity ball. It starts earlier. 6 weeks earlier. 6 weeks earlier. On a freezing December morning when Naomi Brooks stood at my front door with a worn-out coat and a prayer that someone would give her a chance. If you want to know what really happened, if you want to understand how a maid became the most important person in a billionaire's life, you need to hear it from the beginning. And I promise you, the truth is more shocking than anything you're imagining right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever met someone who changed everything? Someone you almost overlooked? Because I almost missed her. I almost sent her away that first day. And if I had, my children would still be silent. My marriage would still be a lie. And I would still be a man with everything and nothing at the same time. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next, what led us to that ballroom and those 3 impossible words for my daughter, is a story about secrets, miracles, and the kind of love that doesn't care about money or status or the walls we build to protect ourselves. Let's go back. Back to the beginning. Back to the day everything started to change, even though I was too blind to see it. The first time I saw Naomi Brooks, I didn't really see her at all. It was December 3rd, a Tuesday morning, and I was late for a meeting with investors from Singapore. My assistant had hired her without consulting me, which irritated me, but I had bigger problems. Vivian had gone to her sister's place in Savannah for 2 weeks, leaving me alone with 3 children who required round-the-clock care and a staff that seemed to multiply every month. Physical therapists, occupational therapists, night nurses, day nurses, a rotating cast of professionals who came, tried, failed, and eventually stopped looking me in the eye. Naomi was standing in the foyer when I came down the stairs, her hands clasped in front of her, wearing a coat that had seen better years. She was petite, maybe 5'4", with natural hair pulled back in a simple bun and eyes that looked tired but kind. My head of household, Mrs. Chen, was explaining her duties. Cleaning the east wing. Laundry. Basic kitchen help. Stay out of the way during therapy sessions. I barely nodded in her direction. Welcome aboard. Mrs. Chen will show you everything. Then I was out the door, phone pressed to my ear, already forgetting she existed. That's the kind of man I'd become. Too busy building things to notice what was crumbling right in front of me. Naomi started that same day. I came home late, after 9, and the house was quieter than usual. The kitchen was spotless. The floors gleamed. There was a faint smell of lemon and something else, something I couldn't quite place. Something warm. I poured myself a scotch and stood at the window overlooking the gardens, watching December rain streak down the glass. Mrs. Chen appeared at my elbow. Sir, the new maid, she asked if she could sing while she works. I told her to keep it down during therapy hours. I hope that's acceptable. Sing. I frowned. Whatever. As long as she does her job. Mrs. Chen hesitated. She also asked about the children. Wanted to know their names, their routines. I told her that wasn't her concern, but she seemed genuinely interested. I waved a hand dismissively. People ask. It's fine. Just make sure she understands boundaries. The kids have enough people hovering over them. That night, after Mrs. Chen left, I walked past the nursery on my way to my office. The door was cracked open. I paused. One of the night nurses was supposed to be on duty, but instead, I heard a voice. Soft. Melodic. Singing something I vaguely recognized from childhood. Some old hymn my own grandmother used to hum. I pushed the door open slightly. Naomi was there, folding blankets near the cribs, singing quietly. The nurse was in the corner, scrolling through her phone, barely paying attention. But Naomi was moving around the room like she belonged there, straightening pillows, adjusting the nightlight, her voice steady and soothing. And here's the thing that made me stop cold. Liam's eyes were open, following her. My son, who spent most of his days staring blankly at the ceiling, was tracking Naomi's movements across the room. I stood frozen in the hallway, watching. She didn't notice me. She just kept singing, kept moving, kept existing in that space with a peacefulness that felt completely foreign in my home. After a minute, I stepped back and closed the door quietly. Probably nothing. Just a coincidence. Kids' eyes wander sometimes. That's what I told myself as I walked away. But that image stuck with me. Liam's gaze, focused and clear, following the sound of her voice. The next morning, Vivian called from Savannah. "How are the children?" she asked, her tone flat, like she was inquiring about houseplants. "Same as always," I said. "No change." There was a pause. "I might stay through the weekend. Margot's hosting a holiday party and I could use the distraction." "Fine," I said, and we hung up without saying goodbye. That's what our marriage had become. Polite distance. Separate lives under the same roof, held together by appearance and legal documents, and 3 children we both loved but didn't know how to reach. I started noticing Naomi after that. Not intentionally. But she had this presence that was hard to ignore once you actually looked. She didn't ask for anything. Didn't complain. Didn't gossip with the other staff. She just worked, quietly and thoroughly, and every evening around 6, after her shift technically ended, she'd linger near the nursery. Mrs. Chen mentioned it after a few days. The new girl, Naomi, she keeps going back to the children's room. I told her it's not part of her duties, but she says she just wants to sit with them for a few minutes. Should I put a stop to it? I thought about Liam's eyes. That moment of connection I couldn't explain. Is she bothering the nurses? No, sir. They don't seem to mind. Then let her, I said. If it makes her feel useful, what's the harm? But I knew there was more to it than that. I was curious. This woman, who had no medical training, no special credentials, no reason to care beyond a paycheck, was choosing to spend time with 3 children the world had written off. Why? 1 week after she started, I came home early. A meeting had been canceled, and for once, I didn't fill the gap with another obligation. I walked into the house and heard music. Not the TV. Not a radio. Someone singing. I followed the sound upstairs to the nursery. The door was wide open this time. Naomi was sitting on the floor between the 3 specialized beds, singing something I didn't recognize. Her voice was beautiful, rich and full of emotion, like she was pouring her whole heart into the melody. The afternoon nurse was gone, probably on a break. It was just Naomi and my children, and all 3 of them were making sounds. Not words. Not yet. But sounds. Humming. Trying to match her pitch. Nora's mouth was moving. Ezra's hands were twitching in rhythm. Liam was rocking slightly, back and forth, his eyes locked on Naomi's face. I stood in the doorway, unable to breathe. Naomi noticed me suddenly and stopped singing. She scrambled to her feet, looking terrified. "Mr. Harrington, I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't be in here. I thought maybe." "What are you doing?" My voice came out harsher than I intended. She flinched. "I'm sorry. I'll go. They seem to like music, and I thought." "They were humming," I interrupted. "Just now. They were trying to sing with you." She looked down at the children, then back at me. Her eyes were wet. "Yes, sir. They do that sometimes. When I sing." I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe I was imagining it. But, "How long has this been happening?" "A few days," she whispered. "It's small. Just little sounds. But it's something. Isn't it?" I walked into the room, moving past her, and stood over Nora's bed. My daughter looked up at me with those big brown eyes, so alert, so present. I reached down and touched her hand. She didn't pull away. Didn't react. Just stared. "Sing again," I told Naomi. "Sir. Please. Sing." She hesitated, then sat back down on the floor and started the hymn again. Within seconds, I heard it. A faint hum from Ezra. Then Liam joined, his voice barely audible but unmistakable. Nora's lips moved, shaping sounds that weren't quite words but were closer than anything I'd ever heard from her. My chest tightened. I'd spent 3 years and more money than most people see in a lifetime trying to unlock whatever was trapped inside my children. And this woman, in 1 week, with nothing but her voice and her presence, had found a key. I looked at Naomi. She was crying openly now, smiling through the tears. "Don't stop," I said quietly. "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." She nodded, wiping her eyes, and kept singing. I left the room and went straight to my office. I sat behind my desk and stared at the wall for 20 minutes, my mind racing. Then I picked up the phone and called the head of pediatric neurology at Emory University. "I need you to come to my house," I said. "Tomorrow. I don't care what's on your schedule. Clear it." That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about those sounds. Those tiny, fragile attempts at connection. And I kept thinking about Naomi. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why did my children respond to her when they'd never responded to anyone else? The next afternoon, Dr. Patel arrived with 2 colleagues. I brought them to the nursery and asked Naomi to do what she'd been doing. She looked nervous with all the doctors watching, but she sang anyway. And again, the triplets joined her. Faint hums. Small movements. Ezra even reached toward her voice. Dr. Patel was stunned. "This is remarkable," he said. "In all my years, I've never seen nonverbal children with this level of developmental delay respond so clearly to auditory stimulation. So what does it mean?" I demanded. "Can you build on this? Can you help them?" He hesitated. "Mr. Harrington, I don't want to give you false hope. This could be a temporary response. A fluke. But," he glanced at Naomi, "whatever she's doing, it's creating a neural pathway we haven't been able to access. I'd like to observe more." "Observe all you want," I said. "But she stays. And she keeps doing exactly what she's doing." After the doctors left, I found Naomi in the hallway, clutching her hands together nervously. "Am I in trouble?" she asked softly. "Trouble?" I almost laughed. "You just did something 3 years of specialists couldn't do." "I don't understand it," she said. "I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I feel connected to them. Like I'm supposed to be here. There was something in her eyes when she said that. Something I couldn't quite read. A depth of emotion that seemed too intense for someone who'd only known my children for a week. Where did you work before this? I asked. A nursing home on the south side, she said. It closed last month. Before that, I did home care for elderly patients. Ever work with children? She hesitated. A long time ago. Briefly. Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. But before I could ask more, Mrs. Chen appeared, needing Naomi for something, and the moment passed. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I sat with my children. Really sat with them, without my phone, without distractions. I watched them sleep and wondered what was locked inside their minds. What they understood. What they felt. Whether they knew how much I loved them, even though I'd been too afraid to hope they'd ever love me back. And I wondered about Naomi Brooks, the woman who'd walked into my house a week ago and was somehow waking up pieces of my children I thought were lost forever. I had no idea that she was wondering the same thing. That she was lying awake in her small apartment across town, staring at the ceiling, terrified and confused because when she looked at Nora, she saw something impossible. She saw herself. Comment below if you've ever felt a connection you couldn't explain. Something that didn't make logical sense but felt true in your bones. Because that's what was happening in my house, and none of us understood it yet. We were all walking toward a truth that would shatter everything. Make sure you're subscribed because what Naomi discovered next, what I was about to uncover, would turn all of our lives upside down. 2 weeks into Naomi's employment, something shifted in the house. It wasn't just the children responding to her voice. It was everything. The air felt different. Lighter, somehow. The staff smiled more. Even Marcus, my business partner who stopped by occasionally, noticed it. Your house doesn't feel like a museum anymore, he said one afternoon, standing in the kitchen while Naomi wiped down counters nearby. Feels like people actually live here. I didn't tell him it was because of the woman in the corner who he didn't even glance at. The woman who hummed while she worked and somehow made a 15,000 square foot mansion feel like a home. But Vivian noticed too. And she didn't like it. She came back from Savannah 3 days before Christmas, breezing through the front door with shopping bags and complaints about holiday traffic. I was in my office when I heard her heels clicking across the marble foyer, sharp and irritated. Where is everyone? She called out. Why does this house smell like vanilla? Did someone change the air fresheners without asking me? Mrs. Chen appeared, welcoming her back. That would be Naomi, ma'am. She bakes cookies during her lunch break. For the staff. It boosts morale. I don't pay her to boost morale, Vivian snapped. I pay her to clean. And who authorized baking in my kitchen? I came out of my office. Vivian, you're back early. She turned to me, her expression tight. 2 days early. I wanted to check on the children before the charity ball. Make sure everything's ready. We have photographers coming. The house needs to be perfect. It is perfect. She looked around, her eyes scanning for flaws she could correct. We'll see. Where are the children? Upstairs. Having their afternoon session. With the therapists. I hesitated. Actually, Naomi's been working with them. Vivian's head snapped toward me. The maid. Damon, what are you talking about? She has a gift with them. They respond to her. Respond how? They're making sounds. Humming. Small vocalizations. Dr. Patel's been observing. He thinks we're seeing real progress. Vivian stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You fired a team of specialists from Johns Hopkins because they couldn't deliver results. And now you're telling me the cleaning lady is running therapy sessions? She's not running sessions. She just sits with them. Sings. And they respond. This is absurd, Vivian said, her voice rising. You can't possibly believe that some woman off the street is doing something that trained professionals couldn't do. Come see for yourself. I led her upstairs, ignoring her protests. When we reached the nursery, the door was open. Naomi was sitting cross-legged on the floor. singing softly while Nora lay on a mat beside her, trying to move her arms in rhythm. Liam was propped in his adaptive chair, his eyes following every movement Naomi made. Ezra was making small cooing sounds, almost like he was trying to form words. Vivian stood frozen in the doorway. Naomi noticed us and immediately stopped singing. She got to her feet quickly. "Mrs. Harrington, welcome home. I was just finishing up. I'll get back to my regular duties." "What exactly are your regular duties?" Vivian asked coldly. Naomi glanced at me, uncertain. "Cleaning, ma'am. Laundry. Whatever Mrs. Chen assigns." "Then perhaps you should stick to those," Vivian said. "The children have medical professionals for their care. We don't need untrained staff interfering." "She's not interfering," I said quietly. "She's helping." Vivian turned to me, her smile sharp and practiced. "Can I speak to you privately?" We stepped into the hallway. Vivian closed the nursery door and faced me with barely controlled fury. "What are you doing? Giving our children a chance? By letting the help play with them? Damon, do you have any idea how this looks?" "I don't care how it looks." "Well, I do. We're hosting 200 people in 4 days. The story is supposed to be about our charity work, our foundation, our commitment to children with special needs. Not about how the maid taught our kids to hum." "They're doing more than humming, Vivian. They're connecting. For the first time in 3 years." Her jaw tightened. "You're being emotional. You're seeing what you want to see. Come in and listen." "I don't need to listen. I need you to remember who we are. What we represent. We can't have people thinking we're so desperate that we're turning to," she waved a hand dismissively, "to whatever this is. This is progress. This is embarrassing," she hissed. "Send her back to cleaning. Hire more doctors if you want. But keep the staff in their place." She walked away before I could respond, her heels echoing down the hallway. I stood there, anger building in my chest. This was exactly why our marriage was dying. Vivian cared more about appearances than our own children. More about what people thought than what was actually happening inside our home. I went back into the nursery. Naomi was gathering her things, her movements hurried and nervous. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause problems." "You didn't cause anything. Keep doing what you're doing." But Mrs. Harrington said. "I don't care what she said. You're helping my kids. That's all that matters." Naomi looked at me with those deep, expressive eyes, and for a moment I saw something there. Gratitude, yes, but also pain. Like she was carrying something heavy that she couldn't put down. "Thank you," she whispered. After she left, I sat with the children for a while. Nora reached for my hand, her fingers curling slightly around mine. It was such a small gesture. Most fathers wouldn't even notice it. But I did. Because 6 months ago, she wouldn't have done that. 6 months ago, she barely knew I existed. That evening, Vivian instituted new rules. Naomi was banned from the nursery during daytime hours. She could clean the room early in the morning before the children woke up, but otherwise, she was to keep her distance. The therapists would resume their normal schedule. Everything would go back to the way it was. I didn't fight her on it. Not directly. Because I'd already made other arrangements. I called Naomi that night. "Keep your phone on," I told her. "After the staff goes home, after Vivian's asleep, I want you to come back. Use the service entrance. I'll make sure it's unlocked. Mr. Harrington, I could lose my job. You won't. I'm giving you permission. But your wife. Let me handle my wife." There was a long pause. "Why are you doing this?" "Because my children were disappearing," I said quietly. "And you're bringing them back." So that's how it started. Naomi would finish her shift, go home, and then return around 10 at night. She'd slip into the house through the service entrance and spend 2 hours in the nursery, singing and talking and just being present. I'd sit outside in the hallway sometimes, listening. The night nurse knew but didn't say anything. Even she could see the difference Naomi was making. And the children began to change. Not dramatically. Not overnight miracles. But small, Steady progress. Liam started bearing weight on his legs when we held him upright. Ezra's sounds became more intentional, more varied. Nora began reaching for things, trying to grasp objects she'd never shown interest in before. Dr. Patel came twice a week to observe, and each time he left shaking his head in wonder. "I can't explain it medically," he admitted, "but something's working." 3 days before the charity ball, Vivian found me in my office going through files. "What are you looking for?" "Nothing," I lied. But that wasn't true. I'd been searching for the children's birth records. Something had been nagging at me for days. An inconsistency I couldn't quite place. The timing of the triplets' birth. The hospital records. Vivian's pregnancy had been complicated, high risk, and she'd been on bed rest for months. But some of the dates didn't line up with what I remembered. I'd been traveling a lot that year, busy with a development project in Miami. Vivian handled most of the medical appointments alone. I trusted her, never questioned the details. But now, with Naomi's presence stirring something in my mind, I started wondering what I'd missed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way Nora looked at Naomi. The intensity of it. Like recognition. At 2 in the morning, I got up and went to my private study, the one Vivian never entered. I unlocked a drawer where I kept personal documents and pulled out the envelope marked medical records. I spread everything across the desk. Ultrasound images. Hospital admission forms. Birth certificates. And there it was. The thing that didn't make sense. The triplets were born at Mercy General Hospital. But 6 weeks before delivery, there was a record from a different facility. Northside Women's Clinic. A place I'd never heard of. Vivian had never mentioned it. I called the hospital the next morning. "This is Damon Harrington. I need information about my wife's stay in your maternity ward 3 years ago." The records clerk was helpful at first, pulling up files. But then she paused. "Sir, I'm showing that Mrs. Harrington was admitted for delivery. But there's a note here that one of the infants was transferred from another facility." "Transferred? What do you mean transferred?" "It says baby C was brought in from Northside Women's Clinic. Born via surrogate arrangement." My blood went cold. There must be some mistake. "It's right here in the file, sir. Would you like me to send you a copy?" I hung up without answering. A surrogate. One of my children had been carried by a surrogate, and Vivian never told me. Why? Why would she hide that? I sat in my office for an hour, trying to make sense of it. Then I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "I need you to pull records from Northside Women's Clinic. Everything related to my family from 3 years ago. And I need it done quietly." "Damon, what's going on? Just do it. Please." That afternoon, I watched Naomi from across the room as she folded laundry in the sitting area near the nursery. She was humming again, that same hymn. And I realized something that made my hands shake. What if it wasn't a coincidence that she'd shown up at my house? What if there was a connection between her and my children that went deeper than anyone knew? I walked over to her. "Naomi, can I ask you something personal?" She looked up, startled. "Of course, Mr. Harrington. Have you ever worked at Northside Women's Clinic?" Her face went pale. The laundry basket slipped from her hands, clothes spilling across the floor. "How do you know about that?" She whispered. And that's when I knew. Before she said another word. Before my lawyer called back with records. Before anything was confirmed. I knew. One of my children was hers. Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought was true suddenly shattered? Drop a comment and tell me. Because standing there, watching Naomi's face drain of color, I felt my entire world tilt on its axis. Hit that like button and stay subscribed, because what happened next, the confrontation that followed, the secrets that spilled out, it's gonna break your heart and then put it back together in a way you never expected. Naomi dropped to her knees, gathering the scattered laundry with shaking hands. I could see her trying to compose herself, trying to find words that wouldn't come. I knelt down beside her, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. "Tell me," I said quietly. "Please. Just tell me the truth." She kept her eyes on the clothes in her hands, folding and refolding a small blanket that belonged to Nora. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. 10 years ago, I got pregnant. I wasn't married. The father left when he found out. I was working 2 jobs, barely making rent, and I was so scared. I didn't move, didn't interrupt, just let her talk. I was cleaning offices at night, and one of them was Northside Women's Clinic. The doctor there, Dr. Sullivan, she saw me one evening, saw that I was pregnant and struggling. She offered me money. A lot of money. She said there was a couple who couldn't carry their own child, who needed a surrogate. She said I could help them and help myself at the same time. My throat was tight. Go on. I didn't want to give up my baby, Naomi said, tears streaming down her face now. But I had nothing. No family. No support. Dr. Sullivan said the child would have everything. The best schools. The best life. She said I'd be selfish to keep a baby I couldn't provide for. She made me believe I was doing the right thing. What happened? I carried the baby to term. When I went into labor, they took me to a private room. I never saw the parents. Never knew their names. Dr. Sullivan handled everything. After the delivery, they let me hold my baby for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Then they took her away and I never saw her again. Her, I repeated. You had a daughter. Naomi nodded, sobbing now. I signed papers saying I'd never contact her, never try to find her. They paid me $50,000 and told me to move on with my life. So I tried. I got married a year later to a good man who knew about my past and loved me anyway. We built a life together. But he died 2 years ago. Cancer. And after he was gone, I couldn't stop thinking about her. My daughter. Wondering where she was. If she was happy. If she ever thought about me. When did you deliver? I asked, though I already knew the answer. December 18th. 3 years ago. The same day the triplets were born. Naomi looked at me then, her eyes red and swollen. When I came to work here and saw the children, saw 3 babies the same age, I told myself it was just a coincidence. Atlanta's a big city. Lots of babies born on the same day. But then I looked at Nora, really looked at her, and I saw my mother's eyes. My grandmother's smile. Things you can't fake or imagine. Why didn't you say anything? Because I signed away my rights, she said desperately. Because I had no proof. Because who would believe that a billionaire's child was carried by a maid? I thought I was going crazy. I thought grief was making me see things that weren't there. I sat back on my heels, my mind racing. Vivian had been on bed rest during her pregnancy. High risk, the doctors said. She'd been told carrying triplets would be dangerous. But she'd insisted she could do it. Insisted we didn't need surrogates or alternatives. Or so I thought. What if she hadn't carried all 3? What if she'd only carried 2, and arranged for a surrogate to carry the 3rd without telling me? It would explain the records from Northside. It would explain the transfer notation. It would explain why Vivian had been so secretive about certain appointments. Why she'd insisted I didn't need to attend every checkup. I need to make a phone call, I said, standing up. Stay here. I went to my office and called my lawyer again. Did you get those records? Just came through, he said. Damon, you need to see these. There's a surrogate contract in here. Signed by Vivian. And the biological mother's signature is redacted. But there's a payment record. $50,000 to a woman listed only as NB. Naomi Brooks. The room spun. I gripped the edge of my desk. Send me everything. Right now. Within minutes, my email pinged with scanned documents. I opened them with trembling hands. There it was. A contract between Vivian Harrington and Northside Women's Clinic for gestational surrogacy services. Except it wasn't gestational. The surrogate had provided the egg as well. Traditional surrogacy. Which meant one of my children wasn't biologically related to Vivian at all. The baby was marked as Baby C in the hospital records. The 3rd triplet delivered. Nora. I sat in that office for 20 minutes, trying to process what this meant. Vivian had lied to me for 3 years. She'd hired a surrogate, used that woman's egg and my genetic material, and passed the child off as fully ours. Why? Why would she do that? Then I remembered. Vivian's family. Old Atlanta money, obsessed with bloodlines and legacy. Her mother had made comments during the pregnancy about ensuring the children were pure Harrington stock. Had Vivian been unable to carry 3? Had she been too proud to admit it? Too afraid of what her family would say if they knew she'd needed help? I found Vivian in the formal living room, going over seating charts for the charity ball with the event planner. I stood in the doorway until she noticed me. We need to talk. Now. She glanced at the planner. Give us a moment. Once we were alone, I closed the door. Tell me about Northside Women's Clinic. Her face went completely still. What? You used a surrogate. For one of the triplets. And you never told me. Vivian stood up slowly, her composure cracking. Who told you that? Hospital records. Legal documents. It's all right here. I held up my phone. You want to explain why I'm finding out 3 years later that one of my children isn't biologically yours? She turned away from me, her shoulders rigid. It was none of your business. None of my business? Are you insane? I couldn't carry 3, she said, her voice tight. The doctors told me it was too dangerous. But my mother, my family, they would never have accepted using a surrogate. They would have seen it as weakness, as failure. So I found a way to do it quietly. By lying to me. By protecting our family's reputation, she snapped, turning back to face me. One surrogate. One baby. The clinic handled everything discreetly. No one ever had to know. Except the woman who carried our child. The woman who gave birth to Nora. Vivian's eyes narrowed. How do you know it was Nora? Because the woman is in our house. Vivian. She's been here for 3 weeks. And she's the reason our children are finally making progress. The color drained from Vivian's face. What are you talking about? Naomi Brooks. Our maid. She's the surrogate. And she had no idea until she saw Nora that her daughter was living under this roof. Vivian grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. That's impossible. The clinic used anonymous donors. There's no way she could know. She knows because she has eyes. Vivian. Because Nora looks like her. Because a mother recognizes her own child. Vivian's expression hardened. Then she needs to leave. Immediately. Fire her. Pay her whatever it takes to keep her quiet. But get her out of this house. No. Damon, if this gets out. I don't care if it gets out, I said, my voice rising. Do you understand what you've done? You've lied about our daughter's birth. You've kept a mother away from her child for 3 years. And you did it all to protect your pride. I did it to protect us, Vivian shouted. To protect our family from scandal and judgment and exactly this kind of chaos. This isn't chaos. This is truth. And it's been breaking our family apart since the day the kids were born. Vivian's hands were shaking. What do you want me to say, Damon? That I'm sorry. That I regret it. I did what I had to do. You did what was easiest for you. You always do. She stared at me, hurt flashing across her face before anger replaced it. If you bring that woman into our lives publicly, if you acknowledge what she is, you will destroy everything we've built. Our reputation. Our standing. The foundation. All of it. Then let it burn, I said quietly. Because I'm not sending her away. Nora is her daughter. And she deserves to know her. Vivian's laugh was bitter and sharp. You've lost your mind. You're going to ruin us for the help. She's not the help. She's Nora's mother. I'm Nora's mother, Vivian screamed. I raised her. I've been here every day. You've barely looked at those children in 6 months. You can't stand being in the same room with them because they remind you that you're not perfect. Vivian slapped me. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. We stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other across a divide that had been growing for years and had finally become uncrossable. I'm calling my lawyer, she said coldly. If you pursue this, I'll file for divorce and I'll take everything. The house. The assets. And I'll make sure you never see those children again. Try it, I said. And I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. How you lied. How you bought a baby and erased the mother from her life. Vivian grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. The charity ball is in 2 days. I expect you to keep this quiet until then. After that, do whatever you want. I'm done. She left, her heels echoing through the empty house. I stood alone in that perfect living room with its perfect furniture and its perfect art, and I realized I'd been living in a museum of lies for years. I went back upstairs and found Naomi still sitting in the hallway outside the nursery, her face blotchy from crying. She looked up when she saw me. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never should have come here. I never should have." "Don't apologize," I said, sitting down beside her on the floor. "This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. What happens now? I don't know. But I'm not letting you disappear again. Nora deserves to know you. And you deserve to know her." Naomi covered her face with her hands and sobbed. "I've thought about her every single day for 3 years. Every birthday. Every holiday. Wondering if she was okay. If someone loved her. Someone does," I said gently. "She just didn't know you existed." We sat there together in silence, two people who'd been strangers 3 weeks ago, now bound together by a truth that was going to change everything. Tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered a secret that turned your whole world upside down? Because that's where we were. Standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump. Make sure you're subscribed because the charity ball is coming. 200 witnesses. Cameras everywhere. And 3 children about to do the impossible in front of all of them. What happens next will leave you speechless. The day before the charity ball, I made a decision that would either save my family or destroy it completely. I called Dr. Patel and asked him to come to the house. When he arrived, I brought him into my study and closed the door. "I need you to run a DNA test. Discreetly." He frowned. "On who?" "My daughter Nora. And Naomi Brooks." "Mr. Harrington, I'm not sure I understand." So I told him everything. The surrogate arrangement. The lies. The records from Northside Clinic. Naomi's story. All of it. When I finished, Dr. Patel sat back in his chair, stunned. "This is highly unusual. And potentially explosive. I know. But I need proof before I do anything else. Can you help me?" He nodded slowly. "I'll need samples from both of them. And this stays completely confidential until we have results." "How long?" 48 hours. Maybe less if I mark it urgent." "Do it." That afternoon, Dr. Patel collected a cheek swab from Nora during what looked like a routine examination. Getting Naomi's sample was easier. I simply asked her, and she agreed immediately, her hands trembling as Dr. Patel swabbed the inside of her cheek. When he left, Naomi sat across from me in my office, looking small and frightened. "What if I'm wrong?" she whispered. "What if I've imagined this whole thing and I'm not her mother? Then we'll know." "But Naomi, I've seen the records. The timeline matches. Everything matches." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I keep thinking about that day. When they took her from me. She was so tiny. She had this little birthmark on her left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. I kissed it before they took her away. I wanted to remember every detail. My heart stopped. Nora has a birthmark. Left shoulder. Crescent-shaped." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "She does." I nodded, unable to speak. She stood up abruptly and walked to the window, her whole body shaking. "All this time. She's been right here. And I've been holding her, singing to her, loving her, without knowing she was mine." "Maybe you did know," I said quietly. "Maybe that's why you came back every night. Why you couldn't stay away." She turned to look at me, tears streaming down her face. "What happens when Vivian finds out you're running tests?" "Vivian's at her sister's house. She left this morning and won't be back until tomorrow afternoon. Right before the ball. And after everyone knows." "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'm not going to hide this. Not anymore." That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. I wasn't a religious man. Hadn't been to church since my grandmother's funeral a decade ago. But I sat in the nursery, watching my 3 children sleep, and I asked God or the universe or whoever was listening to help me do the right thing. Nora stirred in her bed, making a small sound. I went to her and picked her up, holding her against my chest. She was so light, so fragile. Her eyes opened and she looked at me with that serious, knowing expression she always had. "Your mama's here," I whispered. "Your real mama. And she loves you so much." Nora's small hand reached up and touched my face. And for the first time ever, she smiled at me. A real, genuine smile. I held her until she fell back asleep, then carefully placed her back in bed. When I turned around, Naomi was standing in the doorway. Click the image showing on your screen right now to watch part 2. More betrayals, more truth, more secrets are yet to be uncovered.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.